Whew, man, it has been a year for people who like Immersive Sims. We got Weird West, Blood West, Ctrl Alt Ego, Abermore, which, yes, I am still counting Abermore because it is the best bad game. I love it. I don't care if the meme is dead, I am still Abermorbin. But what about all the other cool Immersive Sims that have dropped this year? Because believe it or not, we've had not one, not two, but 3 major releases this year, which I think might be the record. And that's not even counting the other 3 early access launches we got too. And there's even more coming next year. But Charl, I hear you say, what even is an immersive sim? Well, it's when you... Well, if a game lets you stack boxes, climb through vents to get around security, and generally lets you do things that were not intended to be solutions to the task at hand, you are most likely playing an immersive sim. It was first publicly said in a blog post by Warren Spector in the year 2000, right after they launched Deus Ex, and contrary to what you might have heard, the marketing people did not make up the term. In fact, they didn't like the term because it's generally hard to describe what exactly an immersive sim is. And you know, I guess they had the right of it because we're still trying to figure this out over 20 years later. Just look for the passcode 0451. We have a lot to go over this year, which is also why I'm doing this as a scripted video instead of a freeform thing where I sit in front of the camera like I usually do for these roundups. There's probably going to be a few I might miss, so be sure to tell everyone in the comments about anything I didn't mention here. But I tried to be as thorough as I can. We're going to have 4 categories here. What came out, promising early access launches, what I have written off or have still written off even though they're still making noise, and finally, to end on a happy note, what I am looking forward to. The first immersive sim to drop in 2022 by a whopping 2 days was Abermore. And the game is blatantly unfinished, but due to some circumstances, it had to get pushed out. Abermore is jank. And I don't mean like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet jank where there's a lot of visual bugs and the occasional crash. Okay, that kind of jank is there too. I mean like jank. Like entire game mechanics are missing or just not implemented properly to the point of where they may as well not be in the game. The game's procedural level generation makes it not just possible, but likely that you are going to soft lock in any given mission, or if you're even less lucky, the game will forget to unlock your mouse when you need to make a selection in one of these masterfully animated cutscenes, and then you'll have to force quit the game. So why am I dedicating time in this video to Abermore? Because it's hilarious. It's goofy jank that knows no limits, from the crossbow that's blatantly a gun with crossbow limbs attached to it and a 3D modeling software, complete with some muzzle flare by the way, or how, for that matter, in this Victorian-esque setting, you can buy an M1911 or some sort of weird submachine gun, which I checked, and as far as I can tell, these are not store-bought assets on any of the usual like asset buying platforms that I could find. They made these for this game. Then there's the ridiculous way all the NPCs run around when you're discovered, or the fact that at nearly any given time, if you're crouching in the wrong spots, like say an air vent where you might be crouching a lot, you can accidentally clip out of the map. Abermore had, keyword there, had some ideas for mechanics to encourage freeform gameplay, such as the tarot cards that are wish-brand powers of the outsider, to be blunt. All of which end up being essentially useless since ironically the bugs in the game make for better emergent gameplay. For example, the game intends for you to be able to get into a display case in many ways. You could use the lockpicks if you want to play the minigame, or a golden lockpick to bypass it. You could use the pass-through glass tarot card ability if you have one of the cards handy, since yup, abilities are single use, baby. Or you can make a lot of noise by using a weapon to break them open, or even expend a little health by just punching the glass if you don't want to deal with weapon durability issues. However, in reality, you can just crouch down or carefully position yourself where your character model clips through the glass in the display and take everything out of the display case without issue or making any noise. Or sometimes the locks just straight up don't work or aren't there, and you could just interact with the container like the whole locking mechanism wasn't there at all, like you just pop open the door even though there's clearly a lock right there. I give a very cautious recommendation to Abermore, provided you're into movies like The Room or Birdemic, and you've got a few friends and a few more adult beverages to play it with. It's a shame that these devs ran out of time and money to make the game, but it's still good for a laugh if you're in the mood. 2 days after Abermore's release, we got a game that was actually finished. Weird West. If I remember correctly, Weird West was initially meant to come out in January, but they delayed it to the beginning of April, so Abermore gets the honor of being the year's first immersive sim. Weird West, not to be confused with Hard West, Evil West, or a game we're going to get into later called Blood West, takes immersive sims in a new direction, which is the isometric perspective, where you'll play 5 separate stories. Each of them can have effects on subsequent subsequent storylines. Say if you weren't able to kill the big bad in one storyline, they'll be available as a bounty that you can take up as the next main character. You can also pass your inventory back and forth between major characters thanks to them being recruitable followers later on in subsequent chapters. It's a yeehaw game that heavily leans into Western folklore and the unexplainable, where shooting, sneaking, bonking, and chucking barrels full of things you probably don't want to get on your skin are all valid options. Climb on the rooftops, explore the mines, hunt bounties for fun and profit. The West is your oyster. Weird West leans into letting you do and try whatever you want by also letting you quick save as much as you want, among other things. There's no real wrong answer to any of the mission objectives aside from, well, dying. Weird West is the product of Wolf-Eye Studios, led up by former head at Arcane, Rafael Colantonio. This is the studio's first major release, and it's been supported extremely well post-launch, and even has a lot of new stuff that's been added to it since April. Dare I say the footage I have here might be a little out of date, but I've been holding off on the new playthrough until the final patch, which was released very recently. Over the course of the year, Wolf-Eye released 5 major patches that did everything from a boatload of various bug fixes to revamping core mechanics of the game, like how shooties work, which I personally was not a fan of how the shooting worked in Weird West initially, like especially the automatically lock on to the highest possible object type deal, but we're getting sidetracked here. And finally, they added full mod support, which, while pretty bare bones as I write this, since it's hardly been out for a month as I post this, it also has a fledgling first-person conversion mod, which looks pretty cool, and, well, actually, yeah, I'd like to play Weird West as a first-person shooter instead of the top-down game. Nothing against the isometric perspective, I like that they're trying new things. Just seeing it and like, oh, I could play this more traditionally and not have to worry about accidentally shooting birds out of the sky when I'm trying to snipe a dude. Best of all for Weird West is not only is it a Game Pass game, meaning a bunch of you most likely have access to it if you haven't played it already, but they also went and made the entire first act of the game free. I'm not talking like a half hour or even a several hour demo. I really mean the whole first act where you play as the bounty hunter, something that you can easily get 20 hours in if you're willing to do everything and be thorough. And it's totally free right now. I'd highly recommend you check this one out. Unironically, not like Abermore. This is like actually a well done and interesting game. And finally, for the official releases this year, we have Ctrl Alt Ego. I'm gonna call this now and say that in 5 years, when the next batch of gaming channels are gonna make pretentious video essays about Ctrl Alt Ego, saying it was a lost gem and that no one ever knew about it and it flew completely under the radar. And I'm gonna be sitting there like, suck it, you hacks. I was there from day one telling you all to play this while you were doing stupid little Fortnite dances in your school hallway. Do kids still do that? I know I'm out of touch, so I'm genuinely asking, do kids still do that stuff? I make no exaggeration when I say that Ctrl Alt Ego is easily the best immersive sim I have played in years. Also, I am now on the Steam store page for saying that. If you have not played Ctrl Alt Ego yet as you are watching this video, pause the video, save it to your watch later, and go play Ctrl Alt Ego. Ctrl Alt Ego focuses less on big set pieces and other wow factor items you see in a lot of more recent immersive sims, and opts more for solid toolsets, like the most solid toolset I've used in a game. You can do just about anything in Ctrl Alt Ego between all the abilities you get, and the amount of player freedom you get, especially towards the end, is staggering. You can tackle this game in just about any way you can imagine. The ego hopping takes a little getting used to at first, like any game's signature mechanic, but once you start getting it down, it'll be like second nature. I cannot recommend this game enough to you all, and I really hope that if there is one game you choose to get, or at the very least wish list in this whole video, it should be Ctrl Alt Ego. If all of these big releases weren't enough, we also got a bunch of really promising early access launches this year. If you remember last year's ImSim roundup, I had previously said the rule was gonna be 1.0 or no video, which I'll admit in hindsight was a little too extreme, and we're going to revise that to demos do not get videos, which is a little easier to control. Early access is very much a case-by-case basis, with some just being glorified demos that are asking you for money, but others are well worth the price of entry, like Blood West. Blood West is a sneaky shooter that dropped earlier this year, and while I cannot stack boxes in it, I'm grandfathering it into the Immersive Sim Roundup because it's my video and I will be as inconsistent about the gaming niche I cover as I want. Also, because Blood West is just a great time if you like sneaking around. Like, if you like to play games like Deus Ex as a stealthy assassin or those Sniper Elite games, this is gonna be your jam. Blood West combines sneaking around to line up a shot with finding rare trinkets and gaining skills to better shoot at things from from a really long way away. Blood West takes place in an open world, 3 open worlds if we're being specific. The game launched with access to the Badlands for some of those traditional yeehaws, and right around Halloween we got the second part where we get to go down to the swamps where somehow things are worse than they were in the Badlands. I really enjoy the vibe of Blood West. Something about being an undead cowboy summoned to remove the slightly more damned than you from the earth in an endless state of night brought about to you by the curse on this land just does it for me. Also, I think this might be one of my favorite roles Gianni has cast in. Sidebar here, you know you've made it in your industry when I can just say Gianni, and all of you know exactly who I'm talking about. The entire voice cast of this game kills it though. Everyone is great. The recent release of the new area is great, as well as really hard. But unfortunately, there's been a snag with a save-killing bug that can happen to you if you die in the wrong way. I hesitate to mention this though, because when I talked to the dev about it, like giving them my save logs and stuff, they told me that they had already isolated the bug and made a fix that they were currently testing before pushing to live, and based on the time frame they gave me, they should have already had the patch out by now, or like any day now. Heck, the absolute legend that the dev is even offered to create me a fresh save file for my trouble. I ended up politely declining because even if it would only take him 20 minutes, that's still an extra 20 minutes of work that he doesn't have to do, and also it's an excuse to replay the first part of the game because yeah, it's that much fun. I know for a fact, seeing other people's screenshots and their own trinket builds, that I did not nearly find everything in the first major area, and I thought I was pretty thorough. And then there's Gloomwood. Gloomwood is most likely the one you already know out of all these because we've been waiting on soon TM for quite a while, and it would seem that soon is now, at least for early access. Gloomwood came out in early September after a delay announced through a cameo message, or what I think was essentially one but not on the platform, and then a reverse delay where they pulled the launch date back by a day after finding out that Cyberpunk was going to make a big announcement on their pushback day. Gloomwood is easily the most polished early access I've seen in a long time, possibly ever. The few bugs I saw were in clips on Twitter that I personally was not able to reproduce, but I'm not a skilled glitch hunter, so my speedrunning prospects are slim. Gloomwood is every bit that sneaky first-person game with horror elements that a lot of folks have been waiting on since the Thief series petered out. However, now there are plenty of lethal and mayhem-friendly options for the rest of us that believe that the best way to avoid detection is if I toss every last dude into the squisher. Gloomwood does a great job in that respect when it comes to kitchen sink design. And it's also a very rare occurrence where the game doesn't account for something you try to do. Between that and the level design that is rock solid at worst and absolutely amazing at best, Gloomwood's early access is probably the best early access title you can play right about now. That being said, while I know I might catch flack for this, Gloomwood is the weakest offering out of all the games this year, unless we take away the ironic lens from Abermore. Like say, if you're not into movies like Velocipaster or anything by Neil Breen, then Abermore is worse by far. But if you are, then it's Gloomwood. Which isn't to say Gloomwood is bad per se, I just got done extolling it for a bunch of things. It's just that there's been a ton of really good stuff dropping this year, and when compared to everything else, a 2.5 hour early access for $20 isn't the best offering. Like, I hate to be blunt, but especially on the launch, Gloomwood's early access felt like a second, longer demo. It's true that King et al. Have put a lot of work to transform the game into something much further along than the previous demo or actual demo we had before, but Peripeteia didn't make me pay $20 for a second demo. Well, perhaps that's what supporting early access right at the launch really is. Paying money for a demo. Hell, I remember buying into the Forest EA launch, and that was pretty short of a time too. There was hardly anything in there. Also, I cannot say that I personally paid for this because, well, I got a key for this years ago. That's just how long soon has been, but I still don't think that this is presently worth $20. Since the launch in September, most of the stuff we've seen in EA is balance tweaks, which frankly was warranted. Gloomwood is solid on a technical level, but a good deal of the stealth stuff could use fine-tuning. They've added a new type of enemy that wears a trauma plate so that you can't just sneak up and stab literally everyone, and re-implemented the Blood Moon difficulty from the demo with a few more tweaks, such as more enemies and other fun and exciting things for you to lose to. If you're a bit on the fence about checking this one out, I'd say wait for the next major area to be released before you can get into it, because you can do a lot better for $20. Finally, for promising early access, we've got Deadeye Deepfake Simulacrum. That's a mouthful, so we can also call it DDS for short. DDS came out a few weeks ago, and while I was offered a key, I just went and bought it myself because it's $12, and I'm trying not to take free keys from indies. Like, if it's that cheap, I can just buy it myself. I'm reevaluating a lot of my positions on things over the years. Doctorate of Dental Surgery plays from a top-down perspective, and it's a bit more slower paced than the others out here, or perhaps it's just the learning curve. I'm not sure yet. Digital Data Storage has you playing as some poor schmo who got into a bad accident but were luckily saved and reconstituted by a megacorp. Now you have to pay back the $1 million worth of debt you've accrued through their altruistic rescue, which compounds by 1% every day. How are you going to pay this down? Well, conveniently, the megacorp is looking for someone to do some contract mercenary work for them. You get some pretty minimal training because training hours cut into the bottom line, and then you're off to take whatever missions are offered to you on your computer. Welcome to the world of uwu corporate military conscription through debt slavery. Direct Digital Synthesizer lets you go about your business however you see fit, which includes not only your playstyle but also what missions you're going to take, but there is a surprisingly robust hacking system in the game, so that's what I've been doing a lot of. It's not quite on the level of, say, Uplink, an entire game about hacking into systems, but you can do a crazy amount of stuff in dynamic digital signage, and it's a nice touch that everything is done via actually pulling out a laptop, running a command terminal, and inputting commands. You can hack into just about anything from turret systems to individual bullets, but I'm not quite there yet. You are also very squishy while you are hacking, and I have found out the hard way that it's not just the initial death that costs you $1 million. It's all deaths that cost you $1 million. The game is already story complete according to the dev, nobody shall erase you, and part of the reason why I'm personally holding off until we get the 1.0, which is slated to come out midway through next year, is because I need to get good first. But maybe you'll be better at this than me. Now, before we get into what I'm looking forward to, let's go over what I've written off, or perhaps more accurately, what I have still written off since last year, but some exec said something to try and assure the public and the people funding their companies that they are still working on the project. First, and most obvious of which, is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Aside from the news that I think was, last year, that after a round of project cancellations, Paradox actively made the decision to not cancel VTMB2, the only real news I have heard or seen is that when asked if VTMB2 was going to appear at a certain convention whose name escapes me, someone in charge said, no, sorry. We still don't know who is working on the game now since Hardsuit Labs has been removed from the project for a while, but I'm sure they go to another school, so we wouldn't know them anyway, stop asking. We also don't know if any of what was made by Hardsuit Labs for VTMB2 was salvageable, or if what we initially saw, story or gameplay wise, will have any resemblance to what we're eventually going to get. Since we're on that subject too, I will also say that if you see any screenshots purporting to be from a lost alpha, or whatever people say about the game, particularly screenshots featuring the vampire Christina Hendricks, don't believe it. These were posted to a UI designer's portfolio, and as I understand it, these were merely mock-ups. And they're not indicative of, frankly, anything. If you want more Vampire the Masquerade, you're just gonna have to either boot up the original game and run the patch, or run the table. Who am I kidding? I swear, they made that game as obtuse as possible and paywall major lore you need for the story, especially since VTM, as far as I can tell, is a very roleplay heavy game that requires knowing lore. The most I get out of the core books for V5 I bought is that I can crib abilities from various clans to make my 5e vampires more interesting. Also, while we're on the subject, don't at me about Pathfinder. I'm not about to buy a whole new set of books and by extension make the whole group buy a new set of core books for stuff that I could just homebrew as needed and... God damn it! You know what, whatever. I can finish the campaign by the time these actually come out. It's just fine. Thanks, wizards. Next on the if it comes out in my lifetime cool, but I'm not expecting anything at this point, is the System Shock remake. Yes, I am aware the Steam page now says March 2023, but there's been no real announcement despite that to accompany this release date put on the Steam page, despite Night Dive being fairly active at cons this year. A theory that I and some others share is that March 2023 is the end of their fiscal quarter or possibly their fiscal year, and that is the furthest they can push it out on their balance sheet before whatever happens next behind closed doors. I don't know though, that's just a theory. I know as little as you because I'm just going off what's available publicly. All that set aside though, even if the date was legit, they've been saying that System Shock's remake is gonna come out next year for about the last 6 years. Like yeah, for a while they stopped saying that every year for a bit, but then they went right back at it. The most recent leg of this is that they swore up and down that it was gonna come out in summer of last year, but then summer of 2021 came and went with not even a launch date. And then in the Kickstarter update, they said that the game was almost out and done now for QA testing so that they could release it in early 2022, and I'm pretty sure that didn't happen, at least in this timeline. For the record, I do not assume or even so much as suspect any sort of malice here. I think that this is just Night Dive getting in way over their head, as their main thing was remastering older games, not remaking them from the ground up, which not only includes building the whole game, but modernizing dated mechanics from the source material while still appeasing the diehard fans of the original that want literally nothing changed. If we actually do see the System Shock remake sometime in the next year, cool, but I am not expecting it. Finally, in a run of bad luck for Shock lovers, according to the series creator and former head dev Warren Spector, System Shock 3 is in the hands of Tencent, according to him, and he's supposedly working on a new project and has not worked on the thing since 2019. There's really not much more to discuss here, and frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if the game ends up being cancelled in all but name. On a more positive note for the Shock games, while we did not get any reveal for like Bioshock stuff, we did find out who the narrative designer for the next Bioshock game is, a lady who worked on the story for the good Assassin's Creed. But we still don't have any sort of release date or an idea of what the game will be like. Oh yeah, and I recently checked the There's Always a Lighthouse website, and it still has absolutely nothing going on there, but someone keeps paying for that URL. I wonder if somebody just forgot to turn off the auto renew and the expense is so small that it's extremely easy to miss on a budget review. So now let's talk about what there's to look forward to in the near future. I'm phrasing it that way since some of this stuff might not come out next year per se, but we'll get into the stuff that'll most likely come out next year first, like Peripeteia. Yes, Peripeteia was originally going to come out around now, according to the Kickstarter last year, and with the delay, we're officially on strike 1, which, wow, it's been a minute since we've done the 3 strikes rule, so let me go over it for you real quick. In regards to game delays, the first delay is upsetting, albeit reassuring, about the studio's commitment to releasing a quality product, and also means they have the means and finances to push things back if needed and not force a bad product out the door. A second delay is concerning, as this now means that management has failed to properly scope how much they're working on and how much the dev team can do for a second time. 3 or more delays means it's time to take any expectations you had and just lower that bar right down to the floor. Some key element of this production is clearly out of their depth, and barring some extraordinary circumstances, it's fair to say the game is in dev hell or on the precipice of it. Be thankful if this game comes out at all. Now that that's out of the way, Peripeteia has been plugging along, posting updates on their Discord, and I submitted my custom gun request I got with the Kickstarter because you never know when you're going to need to take down light aircraft in an environment where you can only use concealed carry options. Next up is Corpus Edax, something we haven't talked about on this channel before as I just became aware of it this year, which is sticking to a release date of September, be that early access or in full. Corpus Edax styles itself as a first-person melee RPG with all the usual trappings of an immersive sim. There's something I can really capture right now to show you, but I'll leave links to the Steam page and the developer's Twitter if you want to follow along. And in other news that fills me full of hope, Deus Ex is back, baby. Okay, this one's gonna be a bit of a wild ride, but I'll try to summarize things as best as I can. So earlier this year, Square Enix sold off a lot of its Western properties in order to fund some sort of stupid JPEG project that nobody likes. The Swedish company Embracer Group went and bought those properties, including Eidos Montreal and the rights to the original Deus Ex franchise, among a bunch of other things people are happy for. Embracer Group has said they want to use these IPs, and Eidos has said that the next game they want to make is a Deus Ex one, which tracks with how whatever project they were working on was canceled around the time the buyout was finalized, as if to make room for another project. This is good because, for the record, Square was a known Deus Ex hater. But the plot thickens. Shortly after the Square properties were bought by Embracer Group, Saudi Arabia, of all people or entities, bought a $1 billion stake in Embracer Group. I have no idea what that might mean, but the Public Investment Fund also has bought stakes in Capcom and Nintendo, according to this game industry article. Something I might be a little better at sorting out is that, unfortunately, lead writer Mary DeMerle left Eidos Montreal for BioWare. Not so bad for her, but possibly for the Deus Ex fans, because DeMerle knew her stuff and knows her stuff. She and her team are not only why Deus Ex's writing stayed up to snuff, but it's also why Guardians of the Galaxy is the only Marvel product I liked since, I don't mean this as a dig at the MCU, but I honestly can't remember the last MCU product I liked and actually went out of my way to watch, beyond that feeling of, well, everyone's gonna want to talk about this, so I guess I have to see it, before finally deciding to have a stop giving Disney money whenever possible policy, which made that point moot. I guess Venom was good because he was one of my favorite Cape villains, but that was a Sony movie, not MCU. We're getting sidetracked here. DeMerle's off probably writing a banger of a world and plotline for Dragon Age or Mass Effect, so it's gonna be up to the rest of the team to fill her shoes. I'm not too worried though, as based on last year's Game Awards, it seems like she was setting up her team for success back at Eidos. All this boils down to that we don't have a name, a date, or even a hard confirmation of the next Deus Ex game, but we know it's happening. And now, in news that I entirely forgot about but would have put it in the write-off category until recently, we have Judas, the thing that Ken Levine has been working on for almost 10 years now. These videos come out when they do because I always make it a point to watch the Game Awards before finalizing the video. As well, the Game Awards themselves are pretty much giant commercials. It's also the last set of major announcements for the year, and that way I can be sure I'm not missing anything. I came in hoping for Bioshock news, I got something just as good. We got a reveal trailer for Ghost Story Games' Judas. It doesn't tell us a whole lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if all we saw was either pre-rendered or bullshot, but fuck it, I'll take anything. It looks like there's gonna be a lot of player choice, fantastical powers, and funny space shenanigans. I have no idea how the narrative Lego thing is going to fit into this, or if that's even still on the table. Now, given what we kinda know, perhaps that guy 2K was like soliciting for a job to get the thing finished was what the project needed. A closer of sorts. Still no release date, still no proper gameplay exhibition, so this is still a big wait and see, but at least we know what to look for now. Now, before we wrap up, let's do a little lightning round of all the odds and ends. Never Looted Dungeon is an immersive sim that's had a demo out for a while now, and the dev tells me it's coming out early next year. Then, while not coming out anytime soon, there's Spectra, which I really like the assets and aesthetic of so far, which you can see for yourself on the dev's Twitter. And finally, well, I don't really have all that much to show you, as I did not back their Kickstarter, SCP Fragmented Minds has been consistently putting out progress updates on said Kickstarter if you want to try and take a peek for yourself. I got word from one of the devs that Fragmented Minds is also going to shoot for an EA launch next year, sooner rather than later, but as always, nothing is set in stone. And because of course something's going to come across my desk as I am proofreading, there's also a game called Imprisoned Hyperion, which while technically did come out this year, bringing the release total to 4, which definitely is the record at this point. I personally think it needs a little more time in the oven before I talk about it proper, and the dev's been patching quite a bit, so it's just a matter of time. I would look for this more next year. I'd say that it was indeed a fine year for all things immersive sim. What really gets me excited about this year is that it finally feels like what we all thought 2020 was gonna be back in 2019 when I first made that big ImSim video, and before, well, everything happened. We had a solid year with multiple releases without even counting the early access stuff, and we've got a ton more in the pipeline. Because we've got so much stuff coming and we've talked about just how hard it is to really define or categorize an immersive sim in this video, I've decided to open up a little Steam curator page that's dedicated to curating immersive sims. I know this isn't a wholly original idea, but I realize with all the videos that I've done on immersive sims in the past, it could be a good way to try and make it easier for folks to figure out exactly what an ImSim is, since Steam lets devs and others just tag their games as anything. So we got FIFA being tagged as an ImSim. I'm hoping I'll remember to keep it up to date, and as I make more videos on immersive sims, I'm hoping I'll have at least got through like my backlog of videos, because it turns out you're not even publicly listed until you do 10 curation. Links in the description if you want to check it out. So before I wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, a cool Kwanzaa, and whatever else you might celebrate around this time of year before wishing you all a Happy New Year, I'm gonna talk shop for a bit. It's been a hard year for me in a number of ways, which I feel like I've been saying a lot over the last few years, but this one has a happier ending. It's kind of hard to so much as write all this, so bear with me. I've had to rewrite this a couple times. I've talked about it here and there before, but I've had some pretty intense depression for a while. I think it started getting noticeably bad in August of last year, and part of me thought I was just at the point of exhaustion after having to bail out of that death trap apartment after completely relocating my life not even a year earlier. Things got pretty bad, and frankly, I can see it in the quality of my output from then until recently, but thankfully, after a lot of searching for a care provider, I was finally able to start seeing a behaviorist, and things have been worlds better. This is relevant not only because the link between a creator's state of mind and the quality of the work they do, but also because one of the first things we figured out in therapy was that the YouTube Studio app needed to get off of my phone, and that it'd be best to look at the analytics page as little as possible. I don't know how they did it, but in recent years, YouTube Studio has somehow managed to make numbers that are more depressing than the stock market, especially that performance ranking out of 10, which they love to shove in your face whenever they can. If you're more interested in how nasty this can get, Super Eyepatch Wolf made a video that does a better job than I ever could explaining this. videos. The analytics are bad enough. But as some of you might know, I've also been having to deal with the phenomena where, for whatever reason, YouTube just stops bothering to send videos to subscribers anymore, to the point where now I say, if you feel you have earned my subscription, please consider following me on Twitter or at the Discord, because YouTube's subscription system is unreliable. It's been a consistent theme in all my videos that there's always one or two people saying in the comments, wow, I thought something happened to you. I haven't seen your videos in nearly a year, which has been happening to a bunch of people lately. Part of me wants to think this is something to do with how shorts and the people who make them are being heavily prioritized in the algorithm right now, and that people can't or won't make them because they do long form content. And when this happens, long form content gets shafted. That doesn't matter though. In fact, none of that matters. Part of the reason why you haven't seen the Kenshi video just yet, even though I keep talking about it, is that I've come to the realization that the YouTube algorithm has gotten so convoluted that there is no point in playing their games anymore and working yourself to the bone to get a video out within a certain time frame. I'd rather spend my Christmas with my family instead of pulling all-nighters in front of my computer so that I might earn a few more ad dollars to rush out a video in an optimal time. I don't want to make videos for the sake of content. It's one thing if I play something and I am suddenly inspired to do a video about it, which I was frankly not expecting to be the case for Choo Choo Charles of all things, but sometimes that happens. Unfortunately though, you can't force inspiration, at least not the way that YouTube wants you to. There's a creator I used to follow that made really good, insightful videos about something I was interested in, and while they weren't huge, they did well for themselves. Then a few months back, the content started changing. All the thumbnails had them making that stupid poggers face with all caps titles asking hyperbolic questions. The videos were padded out with awful jokes, and they clearly didn't write those themselves, and it generally felt like they were less involved in their own video making. But god damn, were they doing numbers now? Part of me thinks, yeah, I could do that. Give up making passionate videos, go get a professional manager, and focus on making content slop to rake in the big bucks by reading ad copy for Squarespace or whoever the shit with a smile on my face and dead eyes. But that would be fucking horrible. I don't want to do that. I tried having consistent advertisers on the channel earlier this year, and frankly, it just doesn't work for me. Who knows? Maybe it would be better with some sort of professional manager who could bargain for me to get me better deadlines and ad rates, but I don't want to find out. I have completely delisted my business contact email and decided I don't even want to have a contact form. If you need to tell me something, just come on down to the Discord. YouTube's misguided attempts at keeping up with TikTok have been disastrous for long-form content creators. And after a year of trying to play their stupid games, I've decided I'm going to go on a quest to become the opposite of whatever the hell you call those people who have themselves doing the poggers face or the Philip DeFranco hand on chin pensive face in every video. There will be no consistency, there will be no marketability, and there will certainly not be any goddamn Raid Shadow Legends. We're gonna talk about every ImSim and weird little game I feel like whenever I feel like it, and no matter how untrendy it's gonna be, I will somehow find something that is more off topic than the cooking segments. But those are gonna stay too because I just really like doing them. Let me tell you something. I fucking hate the word content now. It devalues what we do. It devalues what anyone does. Part of my struggle with depression was that thanks to content, I stopped believing what I was doing was art or had any creative merit. Yeah, sure, I'm not painting frescoes in cathedrals or composing ballads, but to cheapen what I or anyone else does on YouTube or itch.io or whatever 2D platform artists are going to as they flee AI content scrapers, just down to content is an insult to creativity and all the joy any kind of artist has ever made you feel. Fuck that content slop we're expected to put out at an unsafe frequency to satisfy an algorithm. Fuck trying to present yourself as just a guy doing whatever when you actually have an editor, a manager, co-writers, and you're just too important to make your own damn thumbnails anymore. As far as I'm concerned, that is the YouTube equivalent of being an industry plant. That's not being a person, that's being a product. I want to be a person. I want to make videos about cool stuff I'm passionate about for the joy of creation. I'm going to struggle against all this crap no matter how impossible or unmonetizable it is. So come and join me on the Patreon in our quest to destroy this algorithm. I need your help to defeat it, and by help I mean give me your money so that they can't control me with bad ad rates anymore. So I'll see you all in the next year, where I enter my literally me arc of persisting on this hell on earth, if only to spite those that think I am beneath their notice. On top of all those cool immersive sims we've got coming up, there's finally the sequel to The Forest, Halloween in July, and all sorts of other cool, weird shit to be found under rocks on the Steam page. So in the meantime, have yourself a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a cool Kwanzaa, a not too intense Boxing Day, and a Happy New Year. Stay saucy.
Saucy boy.
What are you doing? I'm trying to make the bed here. You're not even like playing on the sheets. You just, when I put the sheet on, you just sort of sat there in the corner. Do you have a plan? Are you just gonna vibe? I'd like to make my bed. Am I just gonna have to, just gonna have a big lump on the bed? Take the blanket off the lump to reveal a loaf. Oh no, that got him moving. Oh, having a little drinky? You have your little drinky? I'm going to finish making the bed, and then I'll put like my sweater on it so you can sleep. Boy, I love sleeping on my sweaters. Look at that girth.